Good day, viewers at home. You're welcome to School on Air again. Today we move on to chapter 6 of the recommended text for JAMB examination titled Sweet 16. And this chapter focuses on the continuation of the discussion that the main character of the text, Aliyah, is having with her father. And the chapter opens with description of the family and having a breakfast. Then after the breakfast, Aliyah and the father continue with their discussion. And the chapter is titled Stereotype because it focuses on addressing some peculiar issues that people talk about, especially the students in Aliyah's school. And it boils down to their discussion about the religious activities and people involved. This chapter, they were talking about the opinion that Christians have about Muslims. And that is why it is titled Stereotype. If you look at the word stereotype, it has to do with opinions that people hold about others that are not true. And Mr. Bello tries to correct this and informs Aliyah that she should not bother herself about the comment of her classmate, Jumoke. When Aliyah refers to her classmate's comment about the jihadist killing in God's name, Mr. Bello's response is that in all circumstances, one must control one's emotion, and that it is only animals that respond to provocation with a fight. That is one of the major lessons that Mr. Bello tries to teach Aliyah in this chapter. And he also informs Aliyah that God is God of varieties and diversities, and he created different people with different religions, tribes, and culture, and that people should learn to live together and accommodate other people's opinion, religion, background, and culture. This is the major reason for this chapter. If you look at the whole book, it's about pivotal lessons that could guide one's life. And I really want to commend the JAMB for recommending a text like this to teach students some lessons and issues that they need to be conversant with that will help them in relating better in the society. The domestic life of all the family members are also brought to the fore in this chapter, and how Aliyah quarrels on the issue of Boko Haram's bomb blast and so on. So, stereotype is like the kind of generalization or set of ideas that people have about what someone or something is, especially an idea that is wrong. It could be about race, sex, or so on. So that's why we have something like racial or sexual stereotypes mentioned in the chapter. Another thing we need to note about this chapter is that Mr. Bello adds that misconceptions and sentiments need to be discarded in order to build a peaceful world. Like I've said before, there are lessons that this story teaches us, and that is the reason why we have the character of Mr. Bello, is to actually drive home the point or the lessons. The way this book is structured is like an answer and question spree. Mr. Bello rounded off his sermon, of course, in that chapter. If you look at the structure of the book, it is like somebody is asking a question and another person is answering the question and bringing out some moral lessons. The character of Mr. Bello is the one supplying understanding and teaching some lessons, while Aliyah is in a position of a student asking those questions, of course, and those questions are a fallout of the letter that Mr. Bello wrote to Aliyah in the previous chapter of the book. And to round off the chapter, Mr. Bello recommends that Aliyah should learn to control her emotion. That's one. Also, he gives a story of a slave trader and an enslaved black man who found themselves isolated on an island, after a shipwreck. The black slave man really demonstrated the ultimate lesson that Mr. Bello is trying to teach in this chapter. The man helped the white slaver without thinking of revenge. That is very, very powerful. And Mr. Bello is trying to teach a lesson there that you may not have a control over what people do, but you have a control over the way you respond to what people have done to you. And, in that story, we could see that the white slaver is vulnerable. But despite this, the black man helped him, provided for him, protected him, nursed his wound. And eventually, when they were rescued, the two of them parted ways, but the lesson is already passed across. And this is the best way to win people, and not through violence. That is the lesson that Mr. Bello is trying to teach Aliyah in this chapter. That the best way to win people is to be good to them, rather than engaging in violence and war. Do you understand? So Mr. Bello concludes the chapter with that powerful lesson that the best way to win people is to show them love, to show them kindness, to behave in a positive way towards them, even if they have done something negative to us. And before I round off this chapter, I will just summarize the chapter again. I've spoken about the fact that the chapter opens with the family of Aliyah, then their breakfast, yam and fried eggs. Then Mr. Bello continues educating Aliyah, and Aliyah raises a pertinent issue. And that's why the chapter is titled Stereotype. And the issue is about the comment made by Rebecca. Rebecca is a classmate that made a comment about Muslims killing Christians. And Mr. Bello tries to correct this notion and informs Aliyah that he should be careful of stereotypes, one, and she should also learn to control her emotion. Because Aliyah said that she reacted to what Rebecca said. And since then, she has not been taking it lightly with Rebecca. And from the chapter, we could see that even at the point that the father was trying to help her to get over the situation, we could still see Aliyah getting angry. And, the father tries to calm her down, and we could still see Aliyah getting angry at the comment made by Rebecca. And Mr. Bello eventually tells a story to address the situation. And the moral of the story is that we should learn to accommodate others and try to win them, not by violence or war, but through our kindness, through our positive attitude, even towards the negative things that they have done to us. And with that, we come to the end of chapter 6, titled Stereotype. Don't forget again, the definition of stereotype is a set of ideas that people have about individuals or a particular subject that is most times not true. Thank you. Address the questions at the end of this episode. Thank you.